Good afternoon and welcome to Education Matters, WHRV's ongoing discussion with area educators about the issues facing today's classroom teachers. I'm Doug Boynton, and today our in-studio guest is Dr. John Caggiano, Deputy Superintendent for the Hampton City Schools. Dr. Caggiano also serves as Chief of Staff for the division. How does summer learning loss affect students, and what can parents do to keep their children engaged over summer break? How are Hampton Schools academies impacting college and career readiness? The division just received a statewide award for its unique instructional toolkit. How does that help teachers plan their lessons, and what are the challenges facing the division? We're taking your calls. It's Education Matters, and it's next after this news break from NPR and the WHRO Newsroom. Good afternoon and welcome to Education Matters. I'm Doug Boynton. Our in-studio guest today is Dr. John Caggiano, Deputy Superintendent and Chief of Staff for the Hampton City Public Schools. And I should mention, Hampton City Public Schools are stakeholders in HRETA, which holds the license to the WHRO stations. We are taking your calls at 440-2665 and 1-800-940-2240. Dr. Caggiano, welcome.
Good afternoon, Doug. Thank you very much. Bring greetings on behalf of Superintendent Dr. Raymond Haynes, as well as Dr. Richard Mason, our school board chair. So great to be with you today. Thanks
so much. You got into education how? At some point as a young man, you said, that's what I want to do. What was the spark?
I was a latecomer. I actually graduated with an undergraduate degree in finance. I was in that world for a little while. I was coaching boys basketball, 8 to 10-year-olds in Hampton. Had just gotten married, was enjoying my time working with kids, and my wife said, hey, have you ever thought about going back to school to teach? And so one thing led to another, went through a certification program, did some volunteering, subbing, and fell in love with it. Really a passion for working with kids and teaching. So I taught elementary school prior to moving into administration, so grades 4 and 5. In Hampton City Schools is where I started my career.
Chief of Staff, finance served you well, I'll bet.
I enjoy the numbers side, so, particularly in this era of accountability with data and test scores, so still dabble in the numbers quite a bit, and all of those Excel courses I took as an undergrad student have certainly paid off in my career over the years, for sure.
About Hampton City Public Schools, how much staff, how many teachers, how many students, how many schools?
So yes, we've got about 20,000 students, 32 locations, 29 schools if you look on the Virginia Department of Education website, right around a little under 4,000 employees, 1,500 teachers, those numbers there.
And kind of a big deal. All of the schools were certified, were evaluated and passed.
Yes, we're very pleased and proud of our work, working with families, working with city council, city leaders, businesses. 100% of our schools, when you look at the state's system for holding school divisions accountable for student achievement outcomes, 100% of our schools, 29 out of 29, meet or exceed the state's benchmarks.
To what do you attribute that?
I think when you look at the leaders we've had in Hampton over the years, particularly our superintendents and school board leadership working in conjunction, close collaboration with city council, high expectations and a systems approach. And so one of the unique things about Hampton, when you look, for example, at our curriculum, and now that and I know perhaps we'll talk about this being sold or subscribed to other divisions throughout the Commonwealth, we believe we've dialed it in. And so working with stakeholders, providing input on feedback process, and then what are best practices using research to kind of drive continuous improvement efforts. So all of that, I could talk for hours about that one particular topic, and then working closely with families. And so, using data, we're very strategic in our use of data, reading the Virginia Literacy Act and helping students, leave third grade reading fluently with comprehension. And so how do we even use data with kindergarten students, which has come a long way, to close gaps in reading? And so, meeting students' differentiated individual needs is a big part of our success in what we do, whether that's at the elementary, middle, or high school level.
One of the things that Hampton does that might be unique is the academy system. Can you
That's
talk
right.
about that and what that involves?
Yeah, there are a lot of academies throughout the country where high schools have what are known as pocket academies. So, for example, you might have a governor's health science academy in a school, and a select group of students apply for, participate, perhaps meet criteria eligibility for this academy. And so, Hampton, what we noticed, we had pocket academies in all four of our high schools. We noticed that grade point averages were higher, attendance was better, discipline behavior, a decrease in suspension. And so we thought, good for some, why not good for all? So we actually, about 10 years ago, began in conversation with Ford Next Generation Motor Learning, a nonprofit arm of Ford Motor Company, and doing some visits to some sites where they had what are called wall-to-wall academies. And so now, fast forward to 2025, we have 4 high schools, we have 16 academies, so 4 per school with over 44 pathways. And so an example of this academy would be that all of our ninth graders take, for example, a class called Success 101, where they find out about careers. And then, similar to college, by about 3/4 of the way through my ninth grade year, I make a decision about which academy I might like to pursue and then which pathway. An example would be at Bethel High School, we have the Academy of Law and Public Safety. And so, as a sophomore, I begin to think through, do I want to go the legal route and perhaps be a lawyer or a judge? Do I want to be certified as a 911 call operator and work right out of high school? Do I want to be a police officer, EMT? And so the unique thing, when you and I went to high school, if we took 10th grade English, we were reading the same books.
Right.
Now we're teaching through the lens of our academy. So we're still covering the Virginia standards. We're both being exposed and being held accountable for mastery of the Virginia standards in 10th grade English, let's say. But I'm reading through the lens of law and public safety. My books look a little bit different. Perhaps you are reading through the lens of digital marketing and video. And so your academy focus. So that relevancy, bringing businesses around the table to give us advice on curriculum and looking at high demand, high wage jobs and focusing our academies and pathways on those high demand, high wage jobs.
So perhaps I could read a book about the subject I'm interested in instead of Charles Dickens?
Perhaps. That's right. Or Shakespeare. That's right. That's right.
Well, and that kind of speaks to the fact that not every high-paying job requires an advanced college degree.
No, and we've got a lot of what you're learning in the academies are transferable skills, right? So we have some students, for example, who go through the Governor's Health Science Academy thinking they want to be a doctor. By the time senior year comes around, the experience they've had hands-on, they don't perhaps have the stomach for it. So rather than making that decision after mom and dad or me spending 4 years of tuition, perhaps in higher ed, I know perhaps I want to go another route, but I've got some transferable skills that would work in another career or industry.
School divisions everywhere are working hard to find teachers, and that's a problem universally, and I assume in Hampton as well.
It is, nationwide in our business. We've seen this coming for quite some time. The research has told us that there would be a max exodus of baby boomers retiring. And so now the competition for highly qualified teachers is fierce. And one of the things Virginia has done is been creative with the ability to enter the classroom. I think about my experience as somewhat of a career switcher, moving into education, and I had to go back to school, be certified. Now there are alternative routes where we can work with a program like I Teach that Virginia supports, where I'm working through online modules. I've got a mentor assigned to me. And so while I didn't go for undergrad, I'm able to, over the course of a period of time, satisfy module requirements, state certification on assessments, and become certified to teach. So we're looking kind of outside of our traditional teacher education prep programs. There's so much competition, for example, for our human resource departments in our business to go recruiting to four-year colleges, and the number of folks walking across the stage at that level with that degree, we've seen a sharp decline. So we're trying to be creative in our recruitment efforts.
So if I'm understanding what you said correctly, you don't necessarily need that 4-year degree to be a teacher?
You do need a 4-year degree to get that certification.
Right.
But for folks who perhaps did not get the undergraduate certification in teaching and education and that licensure, there are more alternate routes to go now at a quicker speed to become certified. And of course, pay. Everyone is very competitive. It's become almost like a free agent's to use an analogy of a sports analogy back in the day when I was younger, someone would play for the same team for 15 years. And so now it's highly competitive in recruiting highly qualified teachers.
Let's go back to the academies for a moment.
Sure.
How many academies are there, and what topics are covered there?
Sure. So there are 16 different academies, and there are multiple pathways within each academy. So one academy that is very popular, that's been saving our families in Hampton a lot of money, and an example would be the ACE Academy at Phoebus High School, so Advanced College and Experience. So as a sophomore in this particular academy, I begin taking dual enrollment classes taught by Hampton teachers who are vetted and certified by a local community college, our great outstanding partnership with Virginia Peninsula Community College. Right. And so they accrue college credits on high school campus. This past year, our graduating class, we have about 1,400 students who walk across the stage every year. 65 of those students, 64 were from Phoebus High School, walked across the graduating stage at Virginia Peninsula Community College with their associate's degree prior to walking across the stage for their high school degree at no cost to parents. So a lot of those students going into a four-year degree as a junior, multiple scholarship opportunities as well. So that's an example of a college. We have, for example, the Maritime Academy at Hampton High School, where if I want to go the welding route and get certified right out of high school, I've got some pathways, some doors to open for that. Close working relationship with Newport News Shipyard, Huntington Zingle, giving feedback to us on curriculum. If I wanted to go the maritime engineer route and perhaps move on to tech, for example, for a maritime engineering degree, that would be at Hampton High School where I would go through that pathway. So lots of different opportunities at Kecoughtan High School. I'm trying to hit all the high schools. At Kecoughtan High School, we've got, for example, the Academy of Teaching and Learning. We're in talks right now with Virginia Peninsula Community College about that being a dual enrollment program. So I get the opportunity to work with, I'm seeing myself as an aspiring teacher. I get the opportunity to work with perhaps elementary students that are right down the road in a local elementary school, and then working to get dual enrollment credit. I could go into college as a junior perhaps. We're also in talks with Hampton University about how do we even supplement some tuition for students, and with a commitment perhaps to come back to Hampton City Schools to teach for us and stay local.
You got businesses involved with the academies as well, local businesses?
We do, yes. Shout out to Dr. Donna Woods, she retired from Hampton City Schools, and Dr. Jeff Smith, our former superintendent. We brought 80 businesses around the table when we first started the academies, and it was, tell us what you think graduates, whether high school, college, are lacking. That's number one. So what are some skills above and beyond perhaps standards of learning in Virginia? And then number two, where are you seeing need in the industry? And so we want to tailor our academies to meet the growing demand in the region, in Virginia, and perhaps beyond the state's borders about where are the holes, high demand, high wage jobs. And so that really influenced the way we went with pathways. We had an idea before we brought business leaders to the table, for example, of some pathways, but they didn't make the mark based on what we were hearing from business leaders. We have what are called industry councils. And so on a monthly basis, we have folks coming into our schools to meet with teachers, our academy teams, and they're giving, again, feedback on curriculum. They're working with us to create relevant learning opportunities, perhaps job shadowing, mentoring, internship opportunities for our students, paid internship opportunities as well, which the state is now recognizing through their new accreditation system for points. So we're well positioned at the high school level, we believe, as students walk across the stage. It's one of the reasons that we have the fifth highest on-time graduation rate in the state of Virginia. So 132 divisions, we're number 5. We had a 97.93% graduation rate last year on time. Our dropout rate in the last several years has been below 0.5%. And so when you talk to our students and you see that has increased from 87% back in 2015, I'm making connections to what I'm learning in school, and I see a pathway for me once I walk across the stage. And so, again, great feedback from parents, and we're seeing it in our student outcomes.
The state has leaned heavily on students being ready for employment, enlistment, or further education.
That's right.
And
the 3 E's. That's
yeah,
right.
And so you guys are fully on board with that.
We are, yeah. So we've got, again, that comprehensive, very robust data system for tracking. So we're able to run reports by academy to see where students, for example, and the enlisting numbers, for example, is based on the ASVAB and students taking the ASVAB assessment. the Education E, it could be around the number of students taking AP courses or International Baccalaureate Program courses. So we're monitoring all that in monthly conversations with our chiefs of school leadership, with principals as well. So again, very differentiated, individualized data tracking system by student in all of our schools.
I want to talk a little more about external factors like the money that's been frozen by the federal government to help, and direction from the state board, and we'll get to that in just a moment. Again, our guest is Dr. John Caggiano. He is the Deputy Superintendent at the Hampton City Public Schools, and we are taking your calls. It's Education Matters at 440-2665 or 800-940-2240, and we'll be right back after a quick break. Welcome back to Education Matters on WHRV. I'm Doug Boynton. We're talking with Dr. John Caggiano, Deputy Superintendent of Hampton City Public Schools. State Board of Education struggled more than a little with their history curriculum. It is finally rolled out. How's it looking to begin working with it this year?
You know, it's what we do in our line of work. When the state puts out a revised curriculum, typically they do that every 7 years, and so history has just come out, and I know it's taken a little bit longer to roll out history. The state provides school divisions what's called a curriculum framework document, and if you were to use an analogy like building a home, it's kind of like the specifications, and then it's incumbent upon the school division to take those specifications, in this case that curriculum framework document, the standards and the essential knowledge items, and then to build a curriculum. And again, we refer to that like our blueprint for the house. So we take those standards and build the blueprint. So there were some anticipated changes, which a lot of educators, particularly those who work in teaching and learning, curriculum instruction and assessment, we're anticipating. The state has been great about getting stakeholders involved as far as at the teacher level. So we've had teachers on state committees as well. So a lot of the changes we saw coming ahead, and we were able to make adjustments. So one thing that divisions are under a bit of a time crunch, because typically when new curriculum is rolled out, there's a 2-year window. There's a year to teach the old standards, get familiar with the new standards, but we're kind of just ripping the Band-Aid off, so to speak, and jumping right in with the new standards there. But nothing that really has caught us off guard or by surprise. There was
certainly enough conversation about it as it was being put together. So you had kind of advanced knowledge of things to be ready for, and you say you are getting the help from the Virginia Department of Education.
Yeah, history's been an interesting topic in Virginia for quite some time, no pun intended. But, when you look at our accountability system, from a core content standpoint, we're measured on student performance in reading, writing, and science and math, but we still take the history assessment. And so I know, it's a political hot potato, it can be. And when you look at that test initially was removed because I think some stakeholders felt we were over-testing students in Virginia. But lobbyists were able to work with Richmond to continue to expect divisions to administer a history SOL test. So we are still administering those tests, even though they're not part of the accountability system, accreditation system in Virginia.
That new accreditation system, or as it was called, the Road to Readiness, I think, that is complete and ready to go for this fall?
That is complete. So if you look at student data on SOL tests and some other measures at the end of the 2024-2025 school year, this is the first year we're being held accountable for the new accountability system. One of the big components of the new accountability system is student growth, particularly growth as a student in the area of reading and math in grades 3 through 8. And so, for example, in 3rd grade, I took a reading SOL test. I take another reading SOL test in 4th grade. How did I grow? Whether I passed the test or not, meeting that benchmark, how much did I grow? And so the state is in the process right now of analyzing statewide data. And then they'll determine some metrics, some baseline on this student as a 3rd grader who scored this score in reading. Here's how he or she fared as a 4th grade student. And then when we compare it to cohorts throughout the state, what did that look like? So students who had a similar score history in 3rd grade, what do they look like as 4th graders on this reading test? and then they'll draw. And so, unfortunately, we're not going to be in a position to find out those growth results probably until early October, so in the fall. So the state won't be able to be in a position to release final accreditation data for schools, particularly elementary and middle schools, prior to October next year. So it's a bit of a waiting game at this point. Most divisions, just like us, we've analyzed our data, and we've fared very well under the new state accountability system and report card. So we're excited to share that news with our stakeholders and families when that comes out early fall. So stay tuned. But some advantages certainly to the new system. One is that growth piece. Under the previous system, the only students who would be eligible for growth were students, let's say in grades 3 through 8 in math and reading, who failed the year before, and then the state was looking to see if they demonstrated enough growth, and they got extra credit, let's say, in the form of a pass rate for their performance. And now what we're doing is, it doesn't matter if you were scored advanced last year, you still have the opportunity as a school to get credit if you grew that learner. So now school divisions are in a position to address all students' needs and get credit for all students' needs, more so than sometimes school divisions have a tendency to look at students perhaps who are on the bubble of passing or not passing and focus, and rightfully so, we should be focusing on all learners.
I'm thinking about the academies and how they play into that. If you're studying welding, does that help you on the state tests?
On the state SOL test?
Yeah.
I think one of the reasons our high schools have been so successful with the academies model is the relevance piece, right? So if you and you're the math teacher, I'm the English teacher, we have CTE teachers on our team as well. It's not your mother's high school, in that when we went to school, the math teachers didn't necessarily talk at the high school level to the English teachers. Well, now they meet on a monthly basis, twice a month, like middle school teams, and they talk about, here's the curriculum I have coming up for the next 4.5 weeks. Here's my curriculum. Where can we make some connections? And so you're seeing a lot more interdisciplinary work in our high schools. And so there could be, let's say, some social studies skills that were an Achilles heel for students in 10th grade. And now our data has said for the last 2 years, we need to find some extra time to incorporate that. And so now we're saying, hey, to the English teacher, do you mind incorporating this? So I do think that's one of the reasons we can attribute to student success in our high schools, in the academies.
And for graduation rate, the academies certainly help in that regard too, because it's something that the kids are interested in.
That's exactly right. And you're seeing it in the form of multiple data. You're seeing it in attendance data. You're seeing it in student achievement data and discipline data. And I think back to where I was at that age. If I couldn't make a connection to something, I wasn't as interested. But if you're showing me what it could look like, I've got an interest in it already. And you're bringing in, for example, we've partnered with Langley Air Force Base, and we bring in pilots into Algebra 1 class. And they talk about how they use Algebra 1 as a pilot, actually with a piece of paper and a pencil while they're flying. And students hearing that and making the connection that, I can see that it is used in the real world.
Yeah. My algebra class, we had a fella who taught us. He was in artillery during the war. And that was parabolas were important, because you had to figure out where the shell was going to land. Testing, how do teachers prepare students for a test? The phrase test, teach to the test comes to mind, but is there more to it than that?
There is more to it than that. When you think about, when we work with our teachers, we talk about C equals I equals A. So curriculum equals instruction equals assessment, and all of that needs to be tightly aligned. So, your question earlier about the standards in history, it's very important that at a minimum, bare minimum, that a division's curriculum is tightly aligned to the state standards. We say both at the content level and the cognitive level. If the state expects you to know this particular skill, sometimes it's rote memorization. Sometimes they want you to be able to analyze, evaluate, and so you have to be able to demonstrate that. So we take a lot of pride in having a very robust curriculum that's tightly aligned, but it meets minimum standards. And so what we try to do, we know that in Virginia, the expectation from the state, and I know some parents don't like to hear this, it really is teach to the test. It's not teach the test, but it's teach to the test. So it's a criterion reference test. The state says, here's what we expect students to know, understand, and be able to do by the end of this course or grade, and we test on that. But what we do in Hampton and a lot of other divisions, we say these are minimum expectations, and the state has communicated that. So, for example, project-based learning. So how do you take minimum standards and weave them into something that's a little more engaging perhaps for students, or that allows them to partner with a business and say the business brings a problem to them and says, we're looking for this team of high school students to solve this problem. So, for example, Mariners Museum approached a group of our students in Newport News a few years ago and said that we're having a challenge drawing a younger audience. Can you guys work on a solution for us? And so we had an academy team, worked on the solution, media blitz, whole night. So what a great experience for kids. And we were kind of backdooring the state standards, and they're getting this relevant learning opportunity.
So the state sets the standards, and for you guys then, it's outcome-based management. How you get there is up to you as the teacher, or in the academy or the group or whatever.
Yeah, good question. And the teachers do feel pressure, particularly teachers of subjects content where you have an SOL test associated with that, because it's also factored into your evaluation on top of you wanting your students to succeed. So, for example, we have pacing guides, right, with our curriculum, 9-week pacing guide. In many of our core content classes, at the end of the 9 weeks, a student will take somewhat of a summative assessment on that content taught. And so, at teacher, the expectation is that you're not day by day on a skill. We're not looking over your shoulder, but the expectation is that by the end of that quarter, you've covered all of that content and you know where gaps in learning exist at that point. So there is some loose and tight there.
As we talk about tests, teachers have their own set of tests, standards that they need to meet.
That's right.
How does that work in your system in Hampton?
You mean with the standards they're evaluated on?
Yes.
Yes. And so the state recently added an 8th standard. So there are 8 teacher performance standards in Virginia. The expectation from Virginia is that teachers are evaluated on those standards. It's really a local decision as to how often a formal evaluation occurs. Most teachers are evaluated, sit-down summative evaluation every 2 to 3 years, that cycle. And then you're given these formative observations along the way. So all divisions have expectations for the amount of time a principal or assistant principal spends in classroom observing, sitting down with teachers, providing feedback. And so it's through those formative observations that I'm gathering information on teachers that I use to eventually come up with that cumulative summative evaluation. And then teachers are certainly participants in that process. So if a teacher, for example, if I'm looking for additional evidence or documentation on a certain standard, then the teacher has the opportunity for input. So it's a very collegial approach, and when it's done effectively, it's how it should be done.
You've observed teachers.
Yes.
What are some methods of teaching that you find particularly innovative, or something that is going to get students excited about learning? I guess at any level, elementary through high school.
When you think about COVID and some of the adjustments we had to make as educators, there were some practices that we adopted that we're still using today. I think about the technology when we had students in home and in the classroom at the same time learning, right? And so we purchased a device at the time called a swivel device, which allowed a teacher to be remotely connected, walking around the room, and this almost like an iPad screen would follow the teacher. And what we started to see teachers do is get creative and actually go out into the business field, even during COVID, with these. And from the academy lens is an example where I'm going. And they would take this device, for example, going into a welding shop in a business, and they would walk around. And so what we started to do then is post-COVID, even using similar devices, going on the job site where students are seeing virtually without having to take a full day for a field trip, and engaging, using technology to engage in business stakeholders in a pathway that they have an interest. And so the level of engagement there is one piece. Another example would be that, again, the state is kind of incentivizing through those 3 E's at the high school level for students to develop, participate in an enterprise of some sort. And so we have students, for example, now who are earning money in high school. We have students who are creating apps. We have students who, as a team in an academy, logistics, the Trail Academy, I forget the acronym, excuse me. The L I know stands for logistics. They created an app for the bus. What's the bus depot here?
Greyhound?
Not Greyhound, not the depot, but the drawing a blank on it. Based out of Norfolk, the big public transportation.
Hampton Roads Transit.
Yes, created an app that was more user-friendly for someone to, and worked with Hampton Roads Transit to adopt that app. So again, those relevant learning opportunities, and that's where I see and we see the level of engagement skyrocket.
We talked about COVID, and there was learning loss as
there sure was.
Kids came back. Are we through that now? Have we fully recovered?
I don't think we've fully recovered, particularly for that cohort of students that when you look about during COVID, 2020, 2021, who were kindergarten and first graders, a lot of those early literacy skills that are set and really foundational in nature to being able to read fluently and comprehend, there were some significant gaps there. So we're still dealing now with that kind of cohort of students and looking to meet individual needs. There were some best practices that grew as a result of some of the remediation efforts that we had to get engaged in with older students, older elementary, meaning third, fourth, fifth graders. But so some of that we're incorporating into our work now to close reading gaps when we see them. Another pro from the Virginia Literacy Act that was adopted not too long ago in Virginia is the expectation on school divisions to have individualized student reading plans. And so as a teacher, particularly an elementary teacher, it's incumbent upon me important to know my baseline and where students start and where students need to be at varying points of the school year in order to leave my class set up for success at the next level. And so that is a big, big topic. Reading is the gateway to everything.
Our numbers are 440-2665 or 800-940-2240. We've got a caller. Let's go to Tom. Hi, Tom. You're on the air.
Hi, how do you do? Thank you for taking my call. I'm curious how throughout these several Hampton academies, if you have something more universal in the way of financial literacy education, because no matter what field you go into, you always have to know how to manage that money you make, particularly with rules like the Rule of 72, which you
yes.
understand. and I find most Americans have no concept of it, have never heard of it, and yet many I've talked to said, I wish I knew it 40 years ago when I was in elementary school, middle school, high school. And if we emphasize it over and over again, like we do Venn diagrams and set theory and things like that,
that's right.
After 6 times, people will graduate with an appreciation of it.
Yeah, that's a great question. And, we do have an academy that focuses particularly on the finance strand in different tracks, whether it's banking or international finance. But I think, Virginia recognized this several years ago that this is one of those examples of what's good for one is good for all. And so there now is an expectation in Virginia that all students prior to graduating must complete an economics and finance course. And so that is, of course, in fact, my son is a junior in high school, rising senior, and he's got that on his schedule for next year. So you've got to take that course. That course also comes with an assessment called the WISE Financial Literacy Assessment. And so it allows us as divisions to track and progress, and we use those results sometimes to make adjustments to curriculum. We know that in math curriculum, particularly in grades K through 8, that finance is also a piece of that. So we look to build upon the state's framework and say that, what are other financial literacy skills terms, and we weave those into our curriculum. They're not tested on state standards, but we look for opportunities to do so. And so that's part of that, helping kids make connections between elementary, middle, and high school. But great question, Tom.
Thank you, Tom. Thanks for the call. To talk about, to get back to teachers and teaching, how is it going for this year to have enough teachers for fall?
We're well positioned this year. Our HR department is working hard. They typically don't take vacation during the summer months like most educators. And so I don't have a count right now on vacancy. But it's one of those things that's become a year-round initiative now, right? And so it's a major driving goal, objective of our school board. It's part of their strategic plan. It's one of our superintendent's top priorities as well, Dr. Haynes' top priority, one of his top 5 priorities. And so right now we're in the process of continuing to interview and fill voids vacancies. One of the unique things about Hampton is we have a five-year new teacher induction program. And so we've been doing this. Dr. Kim Richardson leads that work for us. We've been doing this for about 7 years, and we found that it certainly has impacted our retention rate. And so first 3 years of that program, you're actually getting training on the clock. So we have, for example, on a quarterly basis, you're coming out of your classroom, we provide you a sub, and topics, whether it's teaching and learning, classroom management, effective instructional strategies. And then the fourth and fifth year of that program are more teacher leadership skills. And so how do you help other teachers and become somewhat of a mentor to novice teachers? So but like of a lot of other divisions, we're still seeing shortages in the area of special education, math and science, and then other positions such as speech and language pathologist. So it has become more of a free market, free agency market, where you're seeing teachers sometimes hop to chase salaries as well, which can be frustrating from an HR perspective.
Our guest is Dr. John Caggiano, Deputy Superintendent, Chief of Staff at the Hampton City Schools. Our numbers, 440-2665 and 800-940-2240. We'll take a quick break and be right back. And we're back. I'm Doug Boynton. I'm here with Dr. John Caggiano, the Deputy Superintendent of Hampton City Public Schools, and its Education Matters at 440-2665 or 800-940-2240. We talked about learning loss from the pandemic. There was also a social factor there too, right? Especially in the earlier grades.
There sure was, yes. And we saw that when students came back, particularly those students who were just entering kindergarten, let's say, or would have entered kindergarten in 2020 or 2021, and K1, 2 in particular. And even older students when it came to attention and, reliance on cell phones and distractibility, and even some older students, breaking habits that they had formed in those formative years around homework.
For cell phones, guidance from the state had to have been a help there in getting the phones out of the classroom.
It sure was. I know some divisions adopted different plans from an implementation standpoint, but I know teachers throughout the Commonwealth, you could hear the applause when that decision was made, for sure.
The federal funds that have been frozen were supposed to be distributed last week. For Virginia, generally, it was more than $100 million. You guys are feeling that, correct?
We are, like a lot of divisions, and not as much as some of the divisions in the western part of the state, some of the smaller rural divisions, but for us, we are. So, for example, the entitlement grants are significantly impacted, the potential to be significantly impacted. Title II, we receive about $1 million a year in Hampton for that.
What is Title II?
Title II really focuses on teacher and training and induction and professional learning opportunities for teachers and staff. Primarily teachers. Most divisions earmark those funds to work with teachers. And we do, for example, have some folks who support that new teacher induction program I mentioned who are actually funded through Title II grants. So, the board and our division leadership team, finance department, kind of seeing that coming. We're planning worst case scenario. But that is one example where we would be hit hard with $1 million there. We also have approximately $500,000 in something called Title IV, another entitlement grant, more of a catch-all. Sometimes it provides funding for us for technology upgrades, sometimes also unique supportive programs, even to support students who might have a financial hardship around college application classes or advanced placement testing. And then a big one for us is the 21st Century Grant. That's a grant. We have actually 8 grants we were awarded by the state, totaling approximately $1.7 million. Dr. Christopher Kelly, shout out to him, who oversees that program for us. And those are after-school programs that we run even throughout the summer. So that could be a big hit to us. I know the State Department is in talks with the feds at DOE at the federal level, and there has been some movement in the feds permitting the state to use some funding from 2019, 18, 19, 20 as a Band-Aid, at least for the foreseeable future. So if those funds are cut, it's not as much about not being able to get through this year with impacting programming, but certainly as we fast forward to the 26-27 school year, potential for some significant impacts there.
School lunches, is that involved with this money?
With this particular round of money, no. We have a program that a lot of divisions with some higher poverty schools, for example, the Community Eligibility Provision Program. So we have 29 schools. So all of our schools, students receive they've received free lunch and free breakfast as well, if they so choose to do so. And so that we know, we're fairly confident, at least at this point, that we're good for 2 more years. But after 2 more years, that could be on the table as well. And that would be a hit for some of our schools with higher rates of poverty, for sure. And so we would look to work with our board and local governing body to perhaps address that need if that arises.
English language programs?
English language programs, we're seeing an increase in English language learners. And the state is seeing that as well. And I think that's why you've also seen the adjustment in the state accreditation system for a more heavily weighted percentage for schools on the performance of English language learners. We have a very robust program at Langley Elementary School for elementary students. And then most of our English language learners now, we believe it's a better model for students to go to school in their zoned neighborhood school. And so we have English language learner teachers that go in more itinerant positions and go from school to school. But we are seeing an increase in that particular student group.
Hampton Public Schools received an acknowledgement for a program you've got for the instructional toolkit. And in a previous life, I wore an advertising hat, and the tagline for this is "Giving Teachers Their Sundays Back,"
yes.
which in the advertising world is the brand promise. How does that work? And it's actually generating income for the school district, right?
It is. It's come a long way. We're very proud of this initiative, and it's a very unique one. I don't know another school division in the country who is doing this. So, flash back to 2014-15, we did not at that point have all of our schools accredited. So it was an opportunity to kind of regroup, reflect on the need perhaps for some curriculum adjustments. And so we did that, and we made some big lifts to align some things and really help teachers deliver a better product to teachers to deliver a better product to students. And that resulted in immediate results in the form of student pass rates on SOL tests and graduation rates increasing. So some divisions in the region began to notice our uptick in student achievement outcomes and said, hey, we'd like to take a look under the hood, if you will. What is it? And so we attributed a lot of that success to this curriculum rewrite. And so it's a heavy lift when you take that blueprint I mentioned earlier, and when you create that blueprint from the specifications, particularly for smaller rural divisions who might not be as heavily staffed, let's say, at the central office level and have the access to curriculum writers. So we went through a process of retooling our efforts to write curriculum, where teachers, if you wanted to write curriculum with us, you were going to get paid. You were going to get paid nicely, but the expectations were ratcheted up. So 3-day course, you had to have your curriculum vetted prior to it going launch live on the site. And as the last 8 years or so have unfolded, we said with these divisions who were interested, well, let's look at creating a business enterprise and make this a venture to create some additional revenue stream for the division. And so we've done that. We're now to the point where we're partnering over 30 divisions, some outside of Virginia. We've dabbled in Pennsylvania as of late. And we're generating this year, at the end of the 24-25 school year, we will have generated approximately $750,000. And so, online subscription basically is how we sell it, and we also sell it as a professional learning opportunity. So a lot of this money, most of the money, is going directly back to the individuals who've created these resources. So when you talk about retention of employees, it's kind of this golden handcuffs approach where not only we're going to pay you for your daily job to write this curriculum, we're going to be able to give you a $5,000, $7,000 stipend from the toolkit that we're paying from other divisions. Some of the other money we're actually paying with students. So we had a student who came before us at the school board meeting a few years back and said, you know what, I just wanted to share that I don't think the English curriculum is the most exciting. And so we said, well, let's bring the student in with some of her friends and get some feedback. And then that launched an initiative. Now with all of our core content, we bring students in over the summer. We pay them to have a student voice in our curriculum. And we, again, use other divisions' money to pay these students. We have project-based learning showcases throughout the year where students can compete for cash prizes. We take money from that toolkit this revenue that comes in on an annual basis, and we pay our students for placing in our project-based learning showcases. So it's really growing and beginning to gain some steam.
Our producer, Dr. Barry Graham, commented that he's usually spent his Sundays in front of a computer planning for the week ahead. But as we talked about,
that mantra,
customizing things, if you have a blueprint from the toolkit,
right,
and customize it to your own way, your own method of teaching, that would appear to be a plus.
Yes. So you mentioned teachers giving their Sundays back. So, I think about my Sundays, watching football as a teacher from the TV. I have my lesson plan book and planning. So what we're doing for teachers is some of our rock star veteran teachers who are solid curriculum writers, writing it for the division and then disseminating it via a Google site that we don't pay anything for, so all third grade teachers can access that. And the beauty about it being live, back to the day when I had the big thick playbook, is that if we go in and see his teacher delivering a phenomenal lesson with a little spin on it that we hadn't seen before, we can videotape the teacher even in a conversation and then link that in the curriculum. So that it being that adaptable, and it is really giving teachers their Sundays back.
School safety.
Yes,
been a really hot topic the last couple of years. What is Hampton doing? You had some online threats in the last year or so. From a journalistic standpoint, we figured the best thing to do is to ignore them unless there's something serious going on.
Yeah, I won't divulge everything we're doing in reference to school safety,
I wouldn't expect
obviously,
you to.
But I will share some things that we have shared with the community and stakeholders about being as proactive as we can. You can never be too safe. So social media certainly is something we're monitoring on really a 24/7 basis. We have staff involved in that. We've done a number of things on campus. And so, for example, all of our doors have ballistic film over any pane on an exterior door. Some of our high schools have a number of doors. And so one thing you can't do is break through that door easily by punching out the glass or even shooting out glass for that matter and reaching your arm through. You're not going to be able to get through that in 5 to 10 minutes. So by that time, someone will be on scene. We have door prop notification systems now that if a door is open, an external door, which some of our high schools have over 90, open for X amount of seconds, any security supervisors in the school, security staff, in the school, building administrators in the school, all receive an automated text, which door is open, and someone can get on the radio and quickly have someone in the nearest vicinity close that door. We work with the Hampton Police Department very collaboratively, closely, a great working relationship with them. Like many school divisions, we have uniformed police officers in our schools, our secondary schools, middle schools, and high schools. School security officers now will be in all of our schools, elementary, middle, and high. Next year we built in for the budget for elementary staff. And, we partner with the Hampton Police Division with dogs. We bring dogs to our buildings on a random basis. We have a third-party vendor that we contract out with another set of dogs, so dogs for drugs, dogs for weapons. We have a weapons detection system in all of our schools. They're portable. And so sometimes, for example, at the high school level, they come in the day and they walk through them. The high school administrator can pick them up and move them in front of the cafeteria if they want to on a Tuesday. And so as students enter. So again, just trying to be as proactive as possible. When you talk to students, and some parents were concerned initially with some of these measures, you talk to students and they say, I feel safe. When I come through the doors, I feel safe. And I know that there are multiple measures in place. And what we share with the community, really, our biggest go-to is the old school anonymous hotline. And so we still use that. We promote that heavily. And so a lot of our tips that come in, if something could perhaps be a threat, we're able to work with the local law and our security staff to in most cases, nip that in the bud prior to.
So let's say I'm about to graduate from college and I'm ready to be a teacher. Sell me on Hampton Public Schools.
Sure. Yes, there's a reason that 30 divisions are subscribing to our curriculum. And if I think about a teacher and transitioning to that, having my own classroom from student teaching, what supports can be put in place? And that is one where if you've got a strong curriculum that you can believe in that is engaging to students, that I don't have to go to Teacher Pay Teacher and websites and search for engaging strategies. That's one piece. The second piece is that teacher induction program. Most divisions, because the state requires it, to have a new teacher mentor. You're assigned somebody. We typically assign more than one mentor. So in many cases, you have a mentor who's assigned for content And sometimes you have a mentor who could be assigned for classroom management, building a conducive learning environment. And so you've got a multi-year program where you're getting paid on the clock to come out for training. The other thing is when you look at our salaries, it's been a strategic objective of our school board and our previous superintendents as well as our current superintendent for quite some time. So we monitor closely how we fare in comparison to surrounding divisions, particularly in pay, and we divide that up into 5-year increments. And so if teachers were to do that homework and look, you would notice that we are up near the top. We're either 1 or 2 in the region on all of those various pay scales. So when we give 5% raises, for example, like we've done the last several years, we also look to work with our local governing body. Are there additional monies that we can put on top of the 5% everyone else is getting to teacher scale? So for example, this year and the last year, 2 years, we've been able to put almost, I think, $6 million on top of the 5% raises that goes straight to teacher scales where we're seeing perhaps a lag in competition. So, and then the last thing I would say, there's a reason that our retention rate is so high. You know, I started my career in Hampton. I worked there 12 years. I left for 4 and then came back. And one of the things you see when you leave is that this culture, this climate in Hampton is one that has this family feel. And I'll end with that.
Thank you. Thank you for joining us, and good luck in both hitting the marks and hiring enough teachers.
Yeah.
Our thanks to Dr. John Caggianos, Deputy Superintendent of Hampton Public Schools. You can find information about Hampton Public Schools at hampton.k12.va.us. Dr. Raymond Haynes is Hampton's Division Superintendent. Hampton Public Schools are stakeholders in Heretta. Heretta holds the license for the WHRO stations. I'm Doug Boynton. Our program was produced by Dr. Brea Graham. Our studio engineers were Jordan Christie. Connor Worley answered your phones. Our theme music and original composition by Todd Washburn. Special thanks to WHRO CEO Bert Schmidt, WHRO Vice President for Content Heather Mazzoni, and Senior Director of Audio Content and Audience Strategy Chuck Dowd. This and previous Education Matters programs are available on demand at WHRO.org. Our next program tentatively scheduled for August. Thank you for joining us. For Education Matters, I'm Doug Boynton.